Well, it seems that the local Baptist church called a community meeting to get ideas about what to do about the overabundance of squirrels infiltrating churches in the area. It's a real problem. And it seems that at their church, the squirrels had taken an interest in the baptistry. And so their deacons met and decided to put a water slide on the baptistry and let the squirrels meet their demise by sliding in the water. But actually, the squirrels liked the slide and knew instinctively how to swim, so twice as many squirrels showed up to church next week. Well, the Episcopal Church decided that they were not in a position to harm any of God's creatures, so they humanely trapped their squirrels and set them free near the Baptist church. 2 weeks later, the squirrels were back when the Baptists took down their water slide. Well, the local Unity Church, after much prayer and meditation, determined the squirrels were there by divine order and had a sacred message for them, so they checked the Animal Wisdom Guide and didn't interfere. The squirrels kept coming back for energy healing, hugs, and affirmations. The Catholic Church came up with a very creative strategy. They baptized all the squirrels and consecrated them as members of the church. Now they only see them on Christmas and Easter. There's more. But the Jewish synagogue, however, came up with the ultimate solution. All it took was the squirrels overhearing the rabbi reading scripture about circumcision, and there hasn't been a squirrel sighted on their property ever since. Oh, no squirrels in this congregation. So happy Easter, everyone. So today is not only the sacred holiday of Easter, it's also April Fool's Day. And it's also the closing of our season for peace and nonviolence that we have been focusing upon for the last 64 days. And it's really not a closing, folks, because there's no closing for a season of peace. It's just that we are closing that particular focus here at Unity of Gaithersburg. And we have celebrated over these last 64 days nonviolence as taught by Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, Cesar Chavez, Nelson Mandela, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And we heard about their legacies last Sunday as our Theater of the Spirit just presented something wonderful about each of them and their contributions to our world. And these leaders in their legacy continue to invite us to pursue peace through nonviolent means. And also, throughout the season, we have been studying New York Times bestselling author Brené Brown's book, Braving the Wilderness. And so today, we're just bringing that all together because it just feels like a perfect union to bring the Easter message into what I wanted to share with you about Brené Brown's work. And if you haven't read the book, it's fine. If you haven't followed it, it's fine. I'll guide you along this morning. But first, I wanted to talk a little bit about Easter in unity. What Easter means in unity. You know, it's the time of year where we celebrate the rise of the Christ. And the Christ in unity is the divine essence, the divine consciousness that we are inherently. We are all the Christ, and Jesus demonstrated that truth. He came to earth, we teach in unity, to teach us the truth that we are the Christ. And Easter is that beautiful day when we consciously choose to rise in our awareness and claiming and expression of our divine nature. And unity is practical spirituality, meaning that whatever we teach, whatever you hear here on Sunday morning, whatever you hear in a class is meant to be integrated into your daily practice. I've always loved that about Unity. That's really why I came to Unity, because I wanted to learn how to walk a spiritual life, how to really take the tools that I had gleaned from studying Unity into my life. And so today, how do we practically apply this Easter message into our lives right now? You ready? Okay. All right. So the chapter I want to talk to you about in Brene Brown's book, Braving the Wilderness, is called Strong Back, Soft Front, Wild Heart. Strong back, soft front, wild heart. And I'm going to bring in the strong back, soft front part today because I think it just relates so much to the Easter message. But first, let's talk about what does it mean to brave the wilderness? So what Brene has been teaching us, and I think Jesus modeled this beautifully, is that when we brave the wilderness, what that means, and it's so relevant today, is we brave the wilderness when we step out of our comfort zone, being who we authentically are, speaking our truth, creating healthy boundaries, doing it in a healthy, respectful, loving way, coming from the love and compassion and courage that we are. That's braving the wilderness. And what an adventure that can be in today's world, huh? So Brene teaches that in order to do this, in order to brave the wilderness, we get to have a strong back and a soft front. And when we have a strong back, what that means is that we release the need to be anything other than our authentic selves. We release the need to please others. We release the stronghold of needing to be perfect, to prove ourselves worthy and deserving, and the need to pretend that we're something else in order to fit in. We claim our true magnificence. We are that. We stand strong in that. And it's no accident that the strongest joint in our body is at the base of our spine. Yes. So Jesus, in his 3-year ministry, modeled standing in his truth no matter what. He was willing to share his heart and wisdom with people who did not get him, who scorned him. But he listened anyway. He heard. He created connection. And he generated love. He had a strong back. And I think about, he stood tall. You know, when you have a strong back, your posture declares that, right? I've never seen a picture of Jesus doing this. He was always like this or in a teaching position. He was always with a strong back. He was a visionary. You know, he never looked down. He looked up and out. He often looked up, raising his consciousness. He stood in the wilderness in his integrity, saying what he meant and meaning what he said. He didn't waste time worrying if people liked him and didn't concern himself with meeting the expectations of others. He did not pretend to be something he wasn't. Because if you remember, in the stories in the Gospels, and even his disciples didn't get it. Remember, his disciples wanted him to be the revolutionary that created a new kingdom on the earth plane. They wanted a new leader. They thought Jesus was the guy. And Jesus is like, no, that is not mine to do. I am a revolutionary of a different kind. The kingdom of heaven is at hand, and the kingdom of God is right where we are. That was his resolution and his revolution. So he stepped out and stood in his truth, and he didn't let discomfort discourage him. And when he was challenged, he stood in his ground mindfully through his parables, you know, what he taught, his actions. He challenged his challengers. He was honest and clear. He had self-love and respect. He had a strong back. And he also had a soft front. You know, so often in our human experience, you know, when we feel like we have to kind of gird ourselves and we got to be strong, often what we can do is armor our front. We armor our heart. We close our heart because it can feel hurtful to express. It can feel very vulnerable. But Jesus stood in his vulnerability. And folks, crucifixions, they were practiced in that time, and unfortunately, some countries still practice them. But in that way of dying, that was so vulnerable, so exposing. It was very shaming at that time. But in the midst of that experience, do you remember what Jesus said? In the midst of it, he had a soft front. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. And remember, he also connected his beloved disciple John with his mother Mary. Meet your son and meet your mother. He allowed himself to be taunted and ridiculed, all the while keeping a strong back and a soft front. And I'm also reminded of the leaders that we have been highlighting over the Season for Peace and Nonviolence. They too were ridiculed and taunted and spit at because they stood in their truth, demonstrating a strong back and a soft front, the practice of nonviolence. And most of those leaders were inspired by Jesus the Christ because his ability to spread love and spread truth, strong in his strength and also in his love and his vulnerability. Love is the great healer, folks. And as scary as it can be, not to allow ourselves to be influenced by all the fear out here. These leaders were vulnerable, but they didn't allow the space that vulnerability created to be filled with hate. Instead, they filled it with love. And Jesus was so grounded in his love and compassion. In preparation for this message, I pulled out my Bible and I was reading the Gospels about Jesus' appearance after he rose. And he first appeared to Mary Magdalene, and then he appeared to Mary, mother of James, and two women who came to anoint his body. And then he appeared several times. He appeared to two disciples, but he appeared to Peter. And if you remember the story that Peter denied Jesus 3 times? And I just thought, how Jesus-like. He went and appeared to Peter. And there's no in these gospel stories, Jesus never said, hey, y'all, where were you on Friday? I didn't see you anywhere. He didn't say that. He was just like, okay, here we are. So Jesus' strong back, soft front, folks, what it did was it led him home to himself. He stood in his greatness. He rose. And the beautiful thing is about this story is it's our story. How many of us are in life and we've felt crucified? How many of us have felt hurt to our core? How many of us are experiencing that in our lives? And so what he demonstrates to us is how we get to navigate our world to the best of our ability, knowing our strength, standing strong. Standing strong. And you notice when you stand strong in that posture, how you immediately expose your heart? Yeah. Greatness rising is us standing in our truth and in our greatness, in our knowing that we are the Christ. And greatness expressing is when we express love. Express love and compassion and respect as best we can. Because, folks, what Brene Brown talks about is as we brave the wilderness, it's all about true belonging. True belonging, because true belonging happens where? Right here. That we belong to ourselves. And when we come home to ourselves, because we're in integrity with who we are, we're the Christ, we're our love, and we stand strong to the best of our ability, and we express love to the best of our ability, as we navigate our world that looks kind of crazy sometimes, often, that when we do that, we come home to ourselves. Easter is about coming home to ourselves, is rising in our awareness of the greatness that we are and the greatness that we can express. And Jesus' story so beautifully models that. So, do you know you're magnificent? Do you know that you are the Christ? That on this day, and let me tell you, Easter doesn't happen one time a year. Easter happens, the Easter experience happens each moment. You choose to rise in your awareness of the truth of what you are and to express your love and your compassion and your amazingness, because it's the truth of what you are. So are we saying yes to the Easter experience?
Yes.
Every day?
Yes.
Moment to moment?
Yes.
Take a deep breath. Let's affirm together. As I arise in my awareness of my true nature, I create peace, joy, and belonging within and around me. Happy, blessed Easter. And so it is.